That desk behind me is made up of 17 pretty long cables, but with a few simple tricks I figured out, I've made them all invisible. All while at the same time making an incredibly functional desk with zero compromises. So let me show you exactly how I did it. I am naturally kind of a messy person. Any kind of tidiness that I could lock down is a good thing for me, and maybe you can relate. So if you ask me, the two biggest things that clutter up a person's desk are the monitor and the audio monitors, but I'll just call those speakers from here on out. I've got both of them lifted off the desk, which visually makes a huge difference and gives more room to work. And two, you can't see any cables. So let's start with the speaker stands first. So I'm sure you figured it out by now. I have run the cables through this pipe down underneath the desk, and that's gonna be a running theme throughout this whole thing. And so once I figured out exact placement for the speakers on my desk, I drilled the holes into the desk itself and went out and bought these 1-inch inner diameter pipes. Now these are just from the hardware store. These aren't anything special, and they came in that sort of raw silver metal color. And so I went out and got some, I think it was Rust-Oleum, just some like matte black paint that I knew would help with any potential rust in the future. I sprayed them black, cut some pieces of wood that were roughly about the same size as the speaker itself, and put a hole in that as well. So I went and got a few custom cables made from a company called Pro Audio LA down in LA. And I also bought a replacement power cable off of Amazon that had that 90-degree bend. And so both cables on the backside take an immediate turn and go straight down under the speaker and then down through the pipe under the desk. And even with that 1-inch inner diameter, I still had to shave just a little bit off the ends of the power cables to make sure everything fit through properly. And I really tried to cover my bases here, so I even made sure to have that specific bend on the XLR cable, so I wouldn't block that unbalanced line input for the future, just in case I need to hook up something to that at the same time. But I absolutely love this setup. It clears up so much space on the desk, and I made sure that where I normally sit at the desk, I'm right at that sweet spot for catching all the highs and all the lows from those nice Atom Audio speakers. And yeah, it just looks clean, I think. All right, arguably the #1 cause for clutter and cables all over somebody's desk and just taking up space on someone's desk is the monitor itself. Now this is a pretty big monitor, and there are a lot of cables going to and from it, but I found this one monitor stand that solved all of my issues and more. Like, this stand really allowed me to take everything a step further. Let's check it out. So from what I can tell, this monitor stand is actually kind of a generic monitor stand. This one happens to be labeled Prime Cables, but I've seen a similar one sold by other companies online. Now it's a heavy duty monitor stand, which is why I can easily hold up the weight of this ultra wide monitor. Now having an arm that can extend long enough over to the side was really important to me. I personally feel like having as much clean space underneath the monitor and kind of having that floating look not only gives you lots of space right in front of you as you're working to place different things, but it also just visually and psychologically looks so much cleaner. And lastly with that, and maybe most importantly for this video, it allows all the major cables to run all the way across and down, sort of out of the line of sight down underneath the desk. So as you can see with this arm, it's got what looks to be pretty standard cable routing. It's actually better than most that I found because it actually runs through a channel basically the entire way. And as it runs down this second part of the arm, I actually flipped this arm upside down. I realized you could just flip it, and if I did that, it would allow me to run at least one cable straight down underneath the desk, which is really cool. I wasn't able to fit the power cable down there, but hey, I'll take it. Now also with a lot of monitors these days, it has some connectivity of its own. There's a little extra USB-C port right there, just in case I need to connect anything or charge anything. And that's just running straight into the monitor itself, so kind of a freebie there. And all I had to do was buy one of those little sticky cable holder things right there, and smack it on the back of the monitor. See, the main reason why I bought this monitor arm is because I noticed that there's sort of some ports on the front and the back. There's a spot on the back that you can see here that just barely fits 4 cables perfectly without any pinching or binding. And then on the front, you'll notice there's 2 little holes there. Well, I actually drilled those 2 holes in, but even though it didn't list it in the ad, this is clearly set up to have cables running through it. They just decided not to open up those ports from the factory. So this front cable is going right to the laptop. I run a MacBook Pro. It's also worth noting that this monitor arm does have like a regular clamp that you could just clamp around the back of your desk. But I don't know, I had this whole thing where I wanted to keep the whole thing totally clean and clear, so I decided to go with the bolt through option. Now over there in the corner is my microphone of choice. It is a Lewitt LCT 440 pure microphone, and I had another custom cable made from Pro Audio LA with that bend in it so that it can stay nice and close to the stand itself, wrap around the stand and right underneath the desk through a little hole that I drilled. And another great way to keep cables at bay is to have wireless components. So this is my low-free black gold kit from them. It includes a really nice clicky keyboard, a calculator, a mouse, that little pad, the big pad underneath, and a lamp and a speaker. So yeah, pretty nice little kit. Very matchy-matchy. All right, you've seen what's on top of the desk. Now it's time to get to the even more important bit, what's going on underneath of it. All right, as it turns out, trying to film the underside of a desk in a half-decent way, it's kind of tricky. And here we are. And like I said in the other couple of desk build videos, I chose these legs because they were more set back, which allows for more leg room. It also allows me to tuck everything really nicely and neatly behind this center support. So my goal with this was to have absolutely everything, all the wiring and cabling and the hub or the dock, all this kind of stuff had to be slim enough and tightly organized enough to fit behind this so that you couldn't see it from the front. And we got there. So this part right here, this is the OWC Thunderbolt 4 dock. And this is kind of the main hub for the entire system. It's not cheap, but I knew that it would have enough power to run absolutely everything I wanted to and have the speeds like Thunderbolt 4 speeds out of multiple ports from this thing. It allows me to future-proof the situation a bit, and I've had not one single problem with the unit. It's just worked day in, day out, every single day. And attached to that is my little Western Digital working drive. I usually just try and run the programs off the computer, then have all the data on one of these, / on a backup array, which is behind me over that way. So running this OWC dock allowed me to run enough power to my M1 Max MacBook Pro. I think it's got 96 watts of power delivery, which is obviously the laptop can take more, but basically 100 watts is plenty. I got a nice slim power bar that has room for expandability if I need it. There's also some USB outlets on there just in case for some reason somehow I run out of USB ports to charge things with everything else. I don't think I ever will, but hey, may as well. And everything under here, all the cables, you'll see there's lots of these little tiny clips stuck to the desk itself. And those have been absolutely amazing for making sure everything is really nicely tucked up underneath the desk. Because this is an oiled desk, I did have to use a little bit of, just a little tiny dab of super glue wherever I stuck them to the desk themselves, just to make sure they won't fall off later. And it's been 10 months and not one has popped off so far, so that's really good. Now with the two heavier items, which is the dock and the power bar, I'm using double-sided Velcro on it with sticky bits on both sides. The stickiness wasn't sticky enough for both of these, probably because they both heat up a little bit too, which wouldn't help things. But so those ended up hanging down one day, and I just had to put a little bit of super glue in a couple of choice spots to make sure they stayed up, and they've been fine ever since. And you can see up under here where this metal plate is, that is where the monitor arm is, and all the main cables come right through this little slot that I drilled into the desk here. And I bought a couple lengths of these, I don't know, cable runs, I guess, to stick them underneath there, and I'm running lots of the power cables through there. I will say, at one part, just when I thought I was gonna be done this whole project, I thought I had screwed the whole thing up royally. And that's because I didn't take into account the big old giant power brick for the dock itself, which is right here. I had wired everything up and there's absolutely no more space for anything essentially along that back row. So I wasn't sure what we were gonna do, but we figured out a way to attach it up over this way, run the cables around, and it's been perfectly fine. Whew. And again, I've got those like little runners, cable runners here. I have one for power and one for the audio cables, because just like the Offspring once said, you gotta keep them separated. Out of all these peripherals and all these things running on this desk, I have 2 cables running off of it, and only one really needs to be running off of it. But anyways, there's the one main power cable, and there is one very, very long USB-C cable running to my backup array. You can also see the mic cable coming down from the top there. So you can see I've got one more sort of cable organizer, cable runner thing, just so that I can keep the cables all nice and tidy and neat right behind this leg of the desk so I don't see it. When you have the legs that are set back, it means they're closer to the wall, which means when the cables finally do exit down at the bottom there, they're really close and tight to the wall and you don't even really notice it. And everything's just nice and tidy. Okay, so what would I do differently with this desk? 2 things come to mind actually. One, I would make that mic cable just like 2 inches longer, because when I unfurl it to do some voiceover, it's a little bit short. I kind of have to lean in a little bit much. Pretty nitpicky. The other thing is I would think I would spend the money to get the actual proper BenQ monitor light, because this one does not actually fit. It doesn't clamp onto the monitor. It sits there just fine, but if I ever bumped it, it's gonna fall off, and that's kind of a mess. With a little bit of planning to begin with, I feel like I was able to create a desk that really suits my needs perfectly and keeps it as clutter-free and as cable-free as possible. Honestly, I couldn't be happier with it. All the products shown here are linked down below, and if you want to see the initial build video for the desk itself and the reasons why I chose certain things and how I got this crazy desktop for literally thousands less than I probably should have, you can click right there. And if you want an overview of all the products on the top of this desk, the monitor and the speakers and the keyboard and all that kind of stuff, click this video right there. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Have a good one.